everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I am speaking with Michelle Ferreri, who is a media and communications strategist, public speaker, and former member of parliament for Petersburg, Kawartha. She's got over 25 years of experience in television, digital media, and community advocacy. Michelle brings a bold, authentic voice to conversations that matter, and she's passionate about unifying people through purpose driven storytelling, public policy, and grassroots engagement. Today, she works with organizations and leaders to amplify their impact through strategic communication and meaningful outreach. Michelle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here, Chloe. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want to get started by jumping in, if you don't mind. Just give us a brief ground. You've had a very unique path into politics. So, what sparked that shift from being media to being a politician?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chloe. It's a question I get asked a lot, and it certainly wasn't a path I anticipated. It was never a long aspiring goal by any means. But I think for most people who pursue politics, it's to fix a problem. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and so entrepreneurs have the same sort of goal. We're always trying to solve a problem. And what I was noticing in my community of Peterborough and also on a national scale was a massive decline in quality of life, but also in particular addictions on the street, homelessness, and mental health supports, lack of them. And so I really certainly wanted to elevate the voice of my community, but also, bring more awareness, but also find some solutions to make sure that we have a better life, but more importantly, our children and our grandchildren and many generations after. And I think that's ultimately why I hope most people go into politics, is to advocate for something they believe in, and to make something better than it is.
Mm. Did you face any unexpected challenges while you were transitioning into this role?
Well, I think, politics more than ever, and certainly in my lifetime, is more polarizing than it's ever been. And so I was always involved in the arts and culture scene in my community. And I was very disheartened and shocked when I came out as a conservative, in that a lot of people instantly didn't like me. People I'd known, people who'd known my work, just because I was a conservative. And I was really shocked that people's political loyalties, party loyalties, just made them stop even wanting to have a dialogue with somebody, or instantly changed how they felt about you rather than you as a person. So that was an eye-opening experience of how partisan or how political people were. And that was a bit of a challenge when I first started. I mean, I've always worked in the public eye for many years, and so being in the public eye or being scrutinized or criticized is something you get kind of immune to, I guess, right? It's something that you get used to. But what I really started to notice was people were unable to even have dialogue or discussions, because if you weren't with them, you were against them. And I certainly found that more so in my, Liberal and NDP's circle of people. There are not everybody. I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, because there's lots that I can have that dialogue with. But it felt like, for the most part, the majority of them, it was just, you're conservative, you're bad. And I had a really hard time understanding that or accepting that, because, my values as a conservative are, what? Don't tell me what to do. Don't touch my stuff. Don't tell me who to worship. Make life better, serve people, and ensure that everybody has personal responsibility and autonomy to live the best life possible for them, and that opportunity and government is fostering that environment for opportunity.
What are some values and principles that you found helpful in guiding that decision making and standing firm in your conservative role?
Mm, good question. Listen, I think most of us have belief systems, and I think we either share them or we don't. And I think, for me, saying it out loud has just never been a struggle. Like, I'm a big believer in anything mentionable is manageable. And I think I don't have any ill will for somebody who thinks differently than me. So I guess I kind of expect other people to not have ill will if I see something differently than them, because we all bring a different lens to every experience because of our lives, and the way we were raised or the city we grew up in and all of these kinds of things. But I think if you I think the hardest part about being sort of a leader or a vocal person is when you are a people pleaser, and women are more guilty of this, I would say, than men. You want everybody to get along, and sometimes that's not always the path forward. Difficult conversations, or saying no to people, or no, I don't think that's the best way forward, is often hard. So to answer your question, I think once you get used to it and knowing that if you really want to make everybody happy, go sell ice cream, and that politics isn't a place for that. And in any leadership role, you have to have principles, you have to have values, and you have to have integrity, and you have to believe in what you're doing. And sometimes that's hard to be a fish going upstream when other people say you're wrong, you're doing all of this wrong. I can think of many examples when I would talk about, sort of, for example, the vaccine injury program, for folks, and even just the mandates in general. I spoke out against them. I saw so many beautiful people that lose so much, and it wasn't right. And now, the truth is sort of coming out of this vaccine injury program, or VISP as it's called by the federal program, where they spent $50 million for consultants to go. There's whistleblowers saying we played ping pong, and we didn't file these complaints. And there were 3,000 applicants, only 200 were approved. And many people's lives are forever changed or ruined. And it's important to speak up about stuff like that, because if you don't, it doesn't get fixed. And I think people make mistakes. I think that happens all the time. And I think I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. When I think about victims of crime, it's something I'm super, super passionate about. So many victims in this country are treated worse than criminals. And we have a lot of work to do. And you can't do the work if you don't acknowledge it exists. And so sometimes it's, you're not the popular person in the room, but you got to stand for what you believe in, and what you feel is right.
So, in standing for what you believe in and kind of, like you said, fighting a little bit of an uphill battle, what are some communication strategies that you have found helpful when you're talking to people who are just adamantly against everything that you
Mhm.
stand for?
I've certainly had this experience multiple times. And, I have many protests out front of my office. And, I'll go to the pro Palestinian ones after October 7th. And, people were out protesting and blaming Israel, and blaming all of these things. And yeah, I tried to go out and have conversations with them. And it's very important to listen, to stop and listen to people and see if there is a willingness to have a dialogue. Sometimes there's not. And so sometimes you have to just say, I hear you, I understand. In that particular instance, we did have dialogue. We didn't see things the same, in terms of Hamas is a terrorist organization that is, A, wants to destroy Israel, Jews, and anyone who doesn't follow their Islam code, but also, they are responsible for so much of the suffering of innocent Palestinian children. And I think, people sort of say, well, you can't do you if you support Israel, you don't care about Palestinian children. Two things can be true at the same time, but you have to fight for something bigger. And I think about the convoy, and walking through that every day, and what was perceived online versus what my real life experience was of walking through that every day. And I went and talked to people. I tried to always talk to protesters out front of Ottawa in Parliament Hill, because those people did a lot of work to come and protest. And I think protesting is actually pretty, peaceful protesting is pretty important, because it's the democratic way for you to voice your disapproval of something, and something's not right. Like, so we have to listen, and try to find a middle ground. There's always almost a commonality with people if you can find it. But sometimes people, they don't want to have that conversation. So I have many people say, I don't actually want to know what you think. I'm here for you to listen to what I have to say. And as a parliamentarian, that's sometimes your job. Sometimes it's just to listen, and say, okay, and not to try to convince them otherwise, but to just try to listen, and hear their perspective. But I think, it's very important for leaders, and I think that's what was missing in the convoy that I couldn't accept, was nobody went out, and by nobody, and I primarily the prime minister, he wouldn't meet with them. And I think a lot of the chaos that happened as a result of the convoy could have been avoided. I don't think it should have ever escalated to that point. I think, when you don't listen to people and let them feel heard or validated, it grows. It grows and grows and grows and grows. And Alberta separation is a perfect example of that. If you don't take people's concerns seriously and hear them and give them a platform to be heard, it will manifest. And that's what happened with the convoy. And so I think, let's not keep repeating the same mistakes. Let's learn from it. Leaders need to know when to listen and when to shut up, and leaders need to know when to lead. And that's, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong, but that's the path forward.
What are your thoughts on the Alberta independence movement?
I think they have very valid concern. And I think, I was recently in Alberta. I don't know when this interview will be aired, but I was there for the Stampede. And many of the folks I spoke with, they just feel very disrespected. And so they should, from Ottawa. And I think for people who aren't from Alberta or from the West or don't know, this is decades and decades and decades and decades of accumulation of resentment building. And that's very hard. A partnership should be where both people benefit. And right now, Alberta is not getting that sort of respect that they deserve from Ottawa, the fair treatment, and they have every right to want to separate, to feel that way. That being said, I think it's absolutely critical that we find the space to unify. Canada needs Alberta. And what we need to do on Canada's end is ensure that Alberta needs Canada. And right now, that's not really happening, And so I think this threat of potentially separating is very important and much needed for change. And so my hope is that it will propel the change that is needed to bring us back together. We are better together. We are stronger together, but only when each representative is giving. If one guy is not carrying the heavy boat and everybody else has to carry it, that's not fair. That's not when you're better together. So we have to ensure that Alberta is respected and appreciated. And we have to change our policy on a federal level to really unlock and unleash what we have to offer, which is a lot of it is in Alberta. And so, they've just been mistreated and dismissed, and that's not fair. So we got to fix that.
Interesting. And that's helpful context for me as well, because I'm from the States, so I'm not as familiar with Canadian politics. So that's interesting to hear. Seems to be a common theme, just a lack of respect and a lack of equal communication. So that's interesting.
Well, it's someone said it best to me. They said if Alberta and Canada was a marriage, we would have been divorced a long time ago.
Wow.
And that's a really great way to put it, because it's like, marriage is hard and both people have to work at it. And, but if both people aren't working at it, it's not sustainable. So Ottawa has to pick up the slack here, recognize what they've done and fix it.
And in what ways is Alberta at conflict with Canada at large? Is it because of the population? They don't get as much of a voice, or what is it that do you think is the catalyst for that conflict?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, Chloe, and maybe you can look it up for me, but they take their money. So the resources, there's equalization. And so Ottawa takes and takes and takes, but doesn't give anything back. And in fact, creates legislation that punishes their ability to thrive and grow and prosper, but is happy to take the equalization payments to give to other provinces from the benefits of the resources. And it's just happened over and over and over again. And it's not fair. It's not a fair deal.
So they need a seat at the table, basically. That makes sense.
They need more than a seat. They need to be respected and valued. Yeah.
So I want to kind of do a little bit of not a 360 necessarily, but a bit of a subject change to talk about the work that you are doing in the mental health and family focus realm. So that is my understanding was a pretty big part of your role in government and also in advocacy. So what specifically what topic specifically are you most passionate about, and what do you find to be missing for a lot of families there in Canada in terms of resources?
That's a really big question, Chloe.
You can
Okay,
narrow
so
it down. I know that's
yeah,
super broad.
so I'll break it up into a couple of things.
Yeah.
So I'm super, super passionate about mental health, addiction, and recovery. And I think
Mhm.
what we have done in this country, in terms of Canadian federal policy under the Liberal guise, is actually criminal. I actually believe it is absurd what we've done. I think maybe it came from a place of good intention,
Mhm.
but the minute the results started to show on the street of wildly out of control homelessness, people bent over in half like a pretzel because they're, high on fentanyl, dilaudid hydromorphone, it should have been absolutely stopped. And the government calls this safe supply. There's nothing safe about it. Drugs and addiction is a disease, and it should be treated as such. I have never met an addict in my life who wants to be an addict. I've never met a family member of someone who's lost a loved one to addiction who didn't want forced intervention to help their loved one because they themselves were not capable of making those decisions because they were under the influence of drugs. And so addiction doesn't just happen. So that's where I come into, childhood resilience, prevention end of things. Very passionate about what we need to be doing to help our children. Social media has absolutely changed our children's brains and cognitive function. What are we doing about that? Online predators. Um, the family dynamic has drastically shifted, and children are facing the consequences of that. And the reason they're facing the consequences of that is because families are struggling so much financially. And when they're struggling financially, they can't be the parents that they want to be. Children are then burdened with adult problems because they see mom and dad fighting or disengaged or disassociated, and the children suffer as their brain is trying to develop, and they're desperately seeking connection, but mom and dad are too busy taking 2 3 jobs to try to make the mortgage payment, if they even have a mortgage, because there's a massive struggle to even get housing at this point. So all of these things are not happenstance. They are direct results of the environment in which the government, and not just federal but provincial, municipal, all levels of government, create the environments that they create. So when people go to work and do everything that was asked of them and do everything right, and they lose 46% of their paycheck to taxes, and they can't put their kids in sports or extracurriculars, or they don't have the choice to stay home to raise their child, and then they can't find childcare because a socialized childcare program was built but without the actual resources to implement it or the money to actually do it properly. And now you have this web of social issues that we see living on our street. I'm right now, when I do this interview, I'm in Ottawa, and in Byward Market, a block from Parliament Hill, it's unrecognizable to what it would have been 5 10 years ago. The amount of homelessness, open drug use, addiction, crime, it is absurd, and there's nothing compassionate about it. So what do? There's so many things that we could be doing differently. We stop funding government funded drugs. We open up healing, treatment, and recovery facilities. We have triage to understand why somebody is in the state of addiction that they are. Were they overprescribed pills? Do they have an undercurrent of perhaps FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? Do they have a mental illness? Are they schizophrenic? Is there other issues at play there? Then we need to triage them and make sure that they get the proper supports that they need to heal. And housing, the right housing supports. We just spit people out over and over and over again. Like, the amount of money going into a single person on a single shift between ambulance, fire, paramedics, and the hospital and shelter system is wild. We could be saving the taxpayer so much more money if we invest in robust treatment, proven models that work, and there are many. There are many across this country, and I'll give a shout out to Right to Heal, which is in my community of Peterborough, because they have been doing this work for over 20 years. They have proven track record of not just treating the addiction and getting you off drugs, but why? Why were you addicted in the first place, and giving you lifelong coping tools to be the best version of you. And it's a web of bad policy and bad systems. And the people on the front line are not the problem. They're deeply caring people. I went out with paramedics, police, the front line at the ERs, but they are restricted by the system and the policies that come down the line. I felt this. I worked in opposition. I wasn't in government. I tried and tried to get them to stop safe supply. I hate using that term because there's nothing safe about it. Let's redirect that funding into treatment and recovery programs. Let's actually start to get people off of the streets. The businesses are failing. It's bad for economy. It's bad for business. It's bad for social morale. It's bad for all of these things. It's just not the compassionate thing to do. And so you got me going here, Chloe. I told you I get really,
No, keep going. This is great.
but this is, somebody said to me, they said, Michelle, why do you care so much about mental health?
Mm,
And I said, because if you don't have a functioning motherboard, if you don't have functioning this, nothing else in your life works. Nothing.
right.
No relationships. You can't get connection. And your productivity at work is garbage. Your relationship with your partner, with your children, with your mom, with your dad, everything suffers.
Mhm.
And, the federal government's role is not to control your life or tell you what to do or how to live. But it should create an environment that when and if you get a job, a good job, like a good paying job that you worked hard for, you can keep that paycheck and take care of yourself. And the economy and mental health are so linked. I heard this over and over and over again in committee testimony from experts across all fields. When the economy is tanking, when inflation is high, when housing is unattainable, mental health and addictions, and not just the people on the street. Like there are many, many people drinking a little bit more, trying a little bit of this because they can't, the stress is so much. They're just trying to cope. They're just trying to get by. And that's why a healthy economy is probably the most compassionate thing we can do as a society. That's why we need to build our resources. You want these amazing mental health and wellness facilities across this country? Build our resources because the money has to come from either you, the taxpayer, or what we are able to offer the rest of the world. And we have what the rest of the world wants. So we might as well develop it and be better for it.
Was there a specific, like, catalyst event where it clicked for you that mental health was so deeply ingrained with economy, or was it just your observations over the course of your career?
Never been asked that question. I think as a kid,
Mhm.
I came from an entrepreneurial home and I would see my parents when money, because in entrepreneurial homes, it's feast or famine.
Mhm.
So you either like, there's no stability. Like it's always like, it's not consistent. And I think when you see the stress that happens, and as a kid, you feel it, like you witness it. And I knew that. And I also have, many, many friends and family who struggle with mental illness. And many have family members who've died to suicide, and a lot of it is especially for men
Mhm.
who feel, whether it's real or not, but feel that they have to be the provider, and they've never really been taught how to communicate or reach out or ask for help, and they're financially struggling. Suicide is often the result of that, and we don't talk about this enough as a society, or the pressures that we put on men and now women. Right now, women are in the same boat to not just be the mother and caregiver, but to maybe also be the financial provider. And I guess I saw from a very young age that when you were stressed about money, you couldn't focus on anything else. And so you actually can't donate the extra dollar at the till to the local charity or kids camp when we by nature love to give, but when we're in survival mode, we can't even help others because we're struggling to help ourselves. And so we feel less and more depressed. And like a lot of that is situational depression as opposed to like a clinical depression. It's environmentally induced because we're just struggling so much and it's hard to break free, and there's shame because you think you're doing something wrong and you're not. It's the cost of everything has went through the roof. Like we went to the movies the other night and I was like, what happened to $4 movies? Like what,
Mhm.
how did we go to the movie? And I feel like movies is a perfect kind of example. Like your age group is really feeling this. Like I feel like you look like the same age as my daughter. And it's like you can't plan anything. Like how do you have goals of ever owning a home or ever having a child if you don't have any belief that you will have enough money to do that? So there's a hopelessness that happens. And the perfect example I can give you of this, when I was in the Calgary Stampede, Calgary and Alberta has a different mindset than the rest of Canada. And you have to go there to understand it. And I remember I was at the grandstand show, and it's phenomenal. Like it's next level of talent, and it is just amazing talent. And they had the fireworks show, and it just kept going. It made like Disney look bad. Like it was next level in terms of how amazing it was. And all I could think to myself was, this is what resource development gets you. So when you have wealth, you are more self-secure. And you don't have to be, I'm not talking about billionaire. I'm talking about being able to, your food bills are, you have enough. You have enough. You live in an abundance mindset. You're more secure, you're more giving, you're more gracious. When you live in a scarcity or poverty mindset, it's hard. You don't want to, or you can't help people in the same way. And you become more petty. Things are harder, and you're worried about your own self. And that's why I just think it's so critical. And you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, so I find Canadians are really brutal. It's our strength and a weakness, but we're like, well, it could be worse. It could be worse. And so we accept mediocrity. We accept below the bar, and that starts to become our new normal. Oh, it's normal now to walk by somebody slumped over who's high or possibly overdosed on the street. That's just normal. We'll just step over them now. And that's how it slowly becomes normalized when nothing about it is normal.
So if you had the power to push through one big change in mental health or in family support, what do you think would be most important?
Well, I think from a government's perspective, the government has to get out of people's way, but they have to provide. In social services, it's a little bit different. And Health Canada has to stop funding drugs and redirect that funding into treatment and recovery models with wrap-around supports, and not just saying it, actually having them in place that work, and proven models with success, which is very difficult in mental health and addictions because everybody's bar for success is different.
Okay, how so?
Well, so if you're an extreme addict and you're over in you don't have a house, you're homeless, your bar for success might be that you were able to detox, and now you're maybe living in a subsidized home. So your bar is lower than, say, somebody who works but is losing their money because they're dealing with addiction or mental health. Like everybody's bar for success is a little bit different. And so I think you can't have a one size fits all for treatment and recovery, but you have to have programs that work. And so what happened with Safe Supply, what they said was, okay, well, we're going to give, they're going to go use drugs anyway. So we're going to give them a regulated amount. And then that will at least level them. And we'll know that they're not getting street drugs that could be contaminated with something that will kill them. So that's kind of where it was born from. And you're like, oh, okay. But no, that's not the message to send to somebody. Number one, the drugs weren't strong enough anyway, and they ended up selling them as soon as they left the pharmacy and sold them to 15, 16-year-olds. And these are very, very strong pills. They're called Dilaudid or Dillies on the street. They became the new addiction. And now you have a whole new generation of addicts because it's very, very, very hard to break free from these. They're opioids. But secondly, the message I'm sending to you by saying I'm actually going to give you the thing that's hurting you is telling you you're not worthy. And that's not true. And I've seen this over and over again in amazing facilities across this country that have proven success rates. You are worthy of investment. You went down a bad path. Something bad happened to you, but you are worthy and you can come back from this. Recovery is not just possible, it's plausible, right? And so that is and so the messaging has to be, no, we're investing in you. So that's the biggest change I would say. You have to redirect this funding to organizations and people who are actually making a meaningful change. And that has to be it. And I think the risk versus reward out of safe supply didn't add up.
Yep.
The risk and the outcomes were far worse than the reward of the maybe one person out of that safe supply program. And that's where
Mhm.
you have to look at things like it's a very complex medical issue that you're dealing with.
Mhm.
And so it's not, again, it's not a one size fits all. Like there's some people that need opioid agonist therapy and will have to be on Suboxone for the rest of their lives. Some people have that. It's just the way it is. But there should be a mechanism in place that doesn't say, I'm going to keep you where you're at. Like the one
Mhm.
thing that the government kept saying was, it's important to meet people where they're at. That's true. But there's nothing compassionate about leaving them there. We as humans need to grow. We need to progress. We are capable of great things. And that is what the government should be offering to people, a way out, not a methodology to just stay in the same lifestyle that is slowly killing you in palliative care. Doesn't make any sense.
Right. So it seems like a lot of this is kind of centering around not only is the younger generation growing up with, being predisposed to addiction, but now they're actually being targeted by this system that's supposed to help them. So, how do you think we can better engage young people in politics and get them motivated to do something about what's happening?
So I actually think young people are killing it. I think they're crushing it. I think they're more engaged than I've ever seen in my life. When I went to the door and I was door knocking in this past election in 2025, everybody who looked like you, Chloe, your age group, you knew what was going on because you're feeling the effects of policy. You're like, I'm trying to go get a job. I can't find one. I'm trying to get a house. I can't afford one. I'm doing everything right. And I'm living in my mom and dad's basement. And I don't think I'm ever going to get out. I
Mhm.
don't know how to meet people because I'm afraid to go to the bar because people get stabbed there. And you're shaking your head, yes, because this is real. It's a real thing. I actually don't think we need to engage the young people. I think the young people are more engaged than they've ever been. I think what we have to do is make the comfortable people who have pensions or secured income understand that voting for the same policies that are hurting your children is not, sorry, I got a call on my phone, sorry about this,
Oh, you're good.
is not the right decision. Your decisions should be about your children and your grandchildren.
Mhm.
And actually, that's who I think we have to connect with and make them understand that it might work for you, like, because you're okay and your mortgage is paid for and you're fine, but it's not working for your kids.
Mm.
And I think that's it. And I also think we have to, and I think that's why this conference is really important. I think we have to put the hard topics on the table that nobody wants to talk about. And I think we have to learn how to talk to each other again. So instead of going to Thanksgiving dinner and being like, I'm going to avoid Uncle John because he's a liberal and I'm a conservative and we're just going to fight. Like try to find the common ground, but it's almost impossible right now. It's almost impossible because people are like they've made their mind up and they don't want to have that conversation. And you know,
Mhm.
a great quote I love in business is, a great negotiation is where both people leave feeling they could have and should have got a little bit more.
Mm.
And I think that's where we have to go in politics. And this is another thing. It's actually a friend of mine who's an NDPer, and obviously people know I'm conservative. And he said this, and I thought it was really well said. He said, "We're all a little bit wrong," and that's true. But when we normalize atrocious things,
Mhm.
that also we can't two things can be true at the same time. I can listen to you, but I can also be extremely vocal and outspoken about a system and a program that is destroying lives. I can still care about the welfare of your children and your life, but also call out the very program that I believe is making this worse. And that's what we have. We have programs and policies that are making bad things that have always been bad, worse, not better.
Mm.
Should go in the other direction. Government role should be to make your life better, not worse.
Absolutely. And so for people who are maybe, just waking up to this fact or who are wanting to have the hard conversations, what are some resources that you could recommend or things that you have done that have been effective?
I think you have to go talk to the people. Like
Mm.
so I think everybody learns a little bit differently. I'm an experiential learner. So like when I go out on the street and I serve food and I talk to people living in tents, like how did this happen? Like When you're walking by a homeless person on the street and you make eye contact and you say hi, I think those are little things. I think you have to talk to people who work in the field, but you have to talk to people with lived experience. So I think that's really important. And I think it ties in service too. It's a great opportunity to go donate or volunteer your time at a food bank or go and help people or talk to young people, like what are you doing? Because I remember I went to this retirement home. And this lady goes, the young people just need to work harder. And I have my chief of staff with me. She's like, if I work any harder, I'm going to go in the hospital. Like these young people are working 2, 3. I met one kid, he was working 7 friggin' jobs. And I'm like, what? And it's like, it's not that. The value of the dollar is way less, ma'am. Like way less. Like, and so then how much did you pay for your house?
Yeah.
I paid $7,000 for my house. And I said, okay. And how much did you sell it for?
Mhm.
452,000. I'm like,
Well, there you go.
so
Oh,
like, even like, so these are the conversations, but there's lots of lessons to be learned from our older generation too. I think we've lost a lot of back to basics things. Like, I think we need to sit down at dinner again together. I think we need to eat meals. We need to put our phones away. We need to, get our kids out on bikes and go outside. Go outside. Like, I feel like I used to yell that in the House of Commons. Go outside. Like, who are you talking to? And I think, those are little things that we can do as a society, to help improve us, because really the government just shouldn't be involved in hardly anything of your life, except if you need a passport, you should be able to get a passport. If you need help and you phone CRA, they should answer the phone. They should answer the phone. You shouldn't be paying almost 50% in tax and getting the worst services that you've ever had in your life. Like, what are we getting? Like, nobody minds paying. Like, Canadians are very generous people. Canadians actually are like, I want to help. And if you told them they have to pay 50% tax, but XYZ is going to happen, more people are going to have housing, they'll do it. But they're doing that, and it's actually gotten worse. It's actually gotten worse. And so why is it getting worse? Because you're spending and spending and spending with no measured outcomes. That's what's happened. So you're like, I interviewed the housing minister on their homelessness program. The government spent $4.5 billion. This is an Auditor General report. You can look it up. $4.5 billion to reduce homelessness. It's worse.
where did that money go?
Worse.
Yeah.
And so, and this is why it's so important. Like, guys, it's not working. Change course. Stop it. So this is when you got to go a little bit deeper, because it's ideology. What do you believe? And most of the liberals I dealt with, and a lot of them in power right now, believe they are the best people to make decisions for you, that you're not capable of making good decisions, and they'll take care of you. And they tell you they're going to take care of you, but they're not taking care of you. They're making your life harder. And we've got to get back to, like, you do the work and you should be rewarded for that work, not you do the work and you get punished for doing the work, because you're completely taking away the whole purpose of going to work. And people need to work. Like, it's important. Work is important. So it's not working what we're doing.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for your willingness to share on these points. For our listeners, I encourage you to pop over to weunify.ca. You can find all the details about our Reclaiming Conference. We hope to see you there. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Chloe.